Welcome to the Red Ink Revival Leadership Podcast. I'm your host, Patrick Norris. We're going to grow your leadership through neuroscience, psychology, and theology. Hi, everybody. I hope you're staying safe and leading strong through this global crisis. We know that crisis is simply code for new opportunities and innovations to emerge. I'm so glad you're with us. In today's conversation, you're going to hear from an influencer who is mentored by people like Sam Walton of Walmart, Jim Walton of Arvest Banks, Don Tyson of Tyson Foods, J.B. Hunt of Hunt Truck Lines, Frank Broyles of Arkansas Razorback fame in college football. Today, Gary Head has been named as a top 10 influencer in the state of Arkansas. Gary Head is the CEO of Signature Banks, and he has some amazing, great stories about leadership. Welcome to episode number 17 of the Red Ink Revival Leadership Podcast. My name is Patrick Norris, and our goal today is to help you lead with a whole heart, a healthy brain, and a soul on fire. I'm so glad to have you with us wherever you get podcasts or in the video version of YouTube. We like to drop content every week, shooting for Thursdays of the month. If this podcast is adding value to your leadership in life, I'd like to ask you, please go subscribe to the podcast, like it, and comment in the reviews. Help us get the word out by sharing on your social media platforms. If you subscribe and comment at iTunes, it'll make our show pop up in recommended shows, which is a big deal. Please help us out with all that. Today's episode is actually brought to you in partnership with River Valley Conference. River Valley Conference is an amazing pastor and church leader conference. I landed at one of their one-day events in Kansas City, and it was off the charts. Our whole Red Ink team's going to be there hosting a breakout on June 8th and 9th. Go to rivervalleyconference.com to register today. Use code REDINK, one word, to get $10 off. I hope to see you there. Also, I'd like to introduce you to an incredible opportunity to learn what drives your money management from a neuroscience, psychological, and theological perspective. Have you been to financial peace trainings but can't seem to execute on it? Do you shut down when budgets have to be reviewed or talked about? Have you ever wanted to have better insights to your team's money management personalities and why they are attached to money the way they are? Let us train you to know what is driving you, your spouse, your kids, and your church staff around financial issues. In our online financial personality training event, each attendee will be given a dynamic assessment instrument that is grounded in theories of psychology, behavioral economics, neuroscience, neuromarketing, attachment, and addiction. It is both an experiential and a training event. Go to redinkrevival.com and look under the Events tab to find out more about our online financial personality training event. Let's go now to this week's episode number 17 with my special guest, Gary Head, as we hear leadership stories of the Titans. Well, Gary, I want to welcome you. It's so awesome to have you a part of our Red Ink Revival Leadership Podcast. I just love that we get to spend a few minutes together today. Thanks for coming on the show.
So happy to have the opportunity to see family.
Come on, family. Well, in full disclosure, so all of our listeners know, not only are you a tenured leader and one of my personal consultants, but you are a first cousin, which gives me a tremendous vantage point to kind of watch your life and your whole career. You've had an amazing career. In fact, you are now the president and CEO, in fact, the entrepreneur and founder of Signature Bank of Arkansas. You also have served as the CEO and president of Arvest Bank in Northwest Arkansas, owned by Jim Walton and the Walton family. You serve on a ton of different charities and nonprofit boards. You've had mentors like J.B. Hunt. You've had mentorship from Jim Walton of the Walmart family, David Glass, who owned the Kansas City Royals, John Tyson, who is of Tyson Foods. You have a prolific input and mentorship that's happened in your life. And today, recently I read that you were named one of the top 10 influencers in the state of Arkansas. And if you are an influencer in the state of Arkansas with all those names and all their lineage behind them, that's a pretty big deal. So the first thing I want to jump into is, because again, I know your backstory, I know who you are, we grew up together. Your dad, Uncle Joe, is a legend. He is known throughout all of Northwest Arkansas. He was a rural mail carrier, and yet he always made people feel seen and valued. I remember growing up, going to a Walmart. I mean, this is just normal life. You'd walk to a Walmart and he'd find somebody and just start talking, and there would be real life connection happening there. You would see people feel so valued, so connected to. And whether it was Little League Baseball that he grew up coaching, being a hunting and he loved taking people hunting and fishing as a guide, just to help them win in it. He also just wanted to make sure everybody was taken care of. Well, I see all of that humanity and that connection and that kind of viral I care about you. I see that in you. And so could you just talk a little bit about how your career really got a spin-off from your dad?
Yeah, I think well, we're all very blessed to have the family that we have had, and you and I particularly. And so, but my father just gave continuously of himself. He's a rural mail carrier. We didn't ever make any money to speak of, but he gave of himself in every way. He would help people any way imaginable, and he never questioned their intentions. He would be easy guy to take advantage of, because he didn't. If you ask him to do it, he would try to do it without really trying to decide why you ask him to do that. And so, God gave him a heart like no one that you and I know. And so, that little piece of him has been so important to be a servant leader. Only leaders that I've ever really respected, I felt like would do what they've asked me to do, certainly before they would ask me to do it. If they weren't willing to do it, they wouldn't have asked me to, right? And so that's to me what a servant leader is. Yeah.
Oh, man, that is amazing. I want to tell a story about your dad because, again, it's the legend of Joe Head. I remember I was a youth pastor during a summer between my years at Bible College in Eureka Springs, Arkansas, which is your hometown and where Joe's from. And we had taken a youth trip to Fayetteville, which is 45 minutes, a little more away. And I was driving a car full of teenagers, and there was another father who was a leader in the church, and he was driving a carload of teenagers. We had gone bowling or something, and we're on our way back from Fayetteville, and for some reason, you know how you get with a bunch of teenagers, I'm getting yelled at from the back seat to pass this other dad. So I pass him, which then makes him begin to compete with me. So it's nighttime, we're rolling. We come to this hill called the Clifty, which you're very familiar with, that T-bones into a stop sign. There's a big gravel parking lot area down at the bottom of the hill, and I'm coming down that hill just hauling it. And the teenagers are yelling at me that there is a police car over to the parking lot. Well, I didn't see him, and I just thought they were messing with me. So I started honking my horn and blew through the stop sign just to make a point. And I blew through it. Well, you can imagine that police officer, his adrenaline was at an all-time high. He is coming after me, lights are blaring. He comes up to my window and he is enraged. He is ready to fight. He's on it. I immediately got my hands on the steering wheel. I say, officer, I apologize. Before we say another thing, I am so sorry. And I began to, backpedal, tell him that, in fact, I couldn't even get what I was about to get out. And he's got his flashlight looking at everybody, and he says, "Who are you? Who are you? Who are you?" And I said, "Well, I'm the youth pastor of a group, and I just thought they were joking." And so again, he's going around the car, and he's asking different kids who they are. And he gets to your brother, your little brother Greg, and puts a spotlight on him, and he's mad. And he puts a spotlight on Greg, and he says, who are you? And he said, Greg, and Greg's, of course, back then he was, I think, a middle schooler. He said, or a junior higher, he says, I'm Greg Head. And immediately, the police officer, he's a state cop, a police officer, immediately says, are you Joe Head's boy? And and Greg says, yes, sir. And the entire demeanor changes in this cop. And he's like, oh, you're Joe Head's boy? And he just begins to talk with us like we're friends. He lets us off, no tickets, nothing, and we drive on. That's the legend of Joe Head. And everybody loves Joe. And he actually, the police officer, mentioned some things that he knew Joe from. To me, that's the kind of story of what a leader is. When you think of what leaders are, you talked about a servant leader, but let's dig into that. What is a leader? What's it mean to be a leader to you?
Well, there's so many different definitions, and I think of so many different things that are attributes of being a good leader. A servant leader is a combination of things, but a great listener, someone that will hear out your conversation before they make a decision on what you should do. I think leadership is not something easily given. A lot of people think they get promoted to leadership positions, and the truth is that you are either a leader or you're not. You may get promoted, but your success will be certainly decided upon your ability to lead. So, a lot of people will spend their entire career, hey, I can't wait to be. Well, there's a lot more to being a leader than just being promoted to some position. So people have to want to follow you to be a successful leader, right?
Yeah.
If people don't like you, or people don't respect you, or people, think you make bad decisions without their counsel, you're not going to be successful. So many things that all begin with having a servant's heart to be willing to do things that other people that aren't successful won't do.
Yeah, right? Yeah. So really what you're saying, it sounds like, is that soft skills related to interpersonal dynamics, being able to make people feel seen, valued, heard, loved, all of that is actually more critical than the hard skills. You may be able to schedule your day well. You may be able to put together one of the greatest strategic plans on the planet. But if you don't have the interpersonal dynamic to influence people to move in a direction, you're still not leading and leading well. You have had the enormous, it's just such a rich privilege to be mentored by some of the most famous and successful people in the world.
I got to tell you my best story. So Mr. Glass, who in your part of the world is adored and deservedly so. So Mr. Glass had a B-90 airplane, which is he could have afforded that out of his small change purse, right? So he didn't fly a big fancy jet. He had a King Air 90, which is and it was old and it had a bench seat. And so he took me we loaded up in Bentonville, Arkansas, and we flew to Kansas City to go see the Royals play the Yankees. Now, I didn't mention to him that I'd always been a Yankees fan because it just didn't seem like
it didn't seem right.
No, we travel up in this, and he wasn't flying, unlike the Waltons who flew their own stuff. But we flew there, we got out. He goes and gets an old Chrysler van, and he drives up. We load into the van, and he drives us to the baseball park himself.
A billionaire, one of the richest guys in the world.
Owned the baseball team.
Yeah.
So we get there, and do we go in the first entrance and honk and wave and drive right up? No. We get in the traffic, and we go all the way around the building, right? And we finally get to the gate where we're going, and finally they recognize him. So instead of, hey, everybody stop, they finally see it's Mr. Glass, and they're going, okay, come on. So we pull up to his parking spot, which, by the way, was right by the door. They're finally we got there, right? and so we walk in, and here's the legend of a servant leader. He walks up to the first young man standing at the door, and he says, "Bill, how's your family?" "Oh, Mr. Glass, they're wonderful. I appreciate your asking." And he goes to the second person that he sees, "Jane, dear, Jane, is your husband feeling better?" He knew every single person all the way in. We walk in. I'm with the baseball coach at the University of Arkansas. Mr. Glass goes to the restroom, and the coach is walking around. I go, "Hey, listen, you better stand still because you don't have a ticket, buddy. We walked in with the boss. They're going to talk us out of here, right?" We walk in, we walk down through the dugout, and we walk onto the field to watch baseball practice. And all the Yankees are out practicing because the Royals had already done. And every one of those Yankees that Roger Clemens, 5 guys probably that are going to be, Hall of Famers if they aren't already, Jeter and all, they're all, "Mr. Glass, Mr. Glass, Mr. Glass." Now, that's a presence of a guy that's driving us himself in a cheap car that could have afforded the luxury of flying up there. And, the people that are humble that don't have to be, I respect.
Yeah.
He was humble. He had a humble heart, and he cared about all those people that in truth, they worked for him. They were working the gates, and they were, and so, and to the person, J.B. Hunt, same kind of guy. Everyone he knew loved him. They all couldn't wait to talk to him and work for him. And Sam Walton was my boss. And, people loved Sam Walton because he connected with them, right?
Yeah.
He had a personal skill that you just wanted to be around him. And that's a God-given talent. I don't think that's something you can go and read in a book and learn.
Right.
So, however God touches you, that gives you those things, he gave it to my father, and thankfully I got some of that, right?
Yeah, totally.
These people that I admire. Now, there's a lot of successful leaders, Patrick, that I don't necessarily admire. I don't like the way they do it. I don't like, the results may be great, but it has to fit in my skin, and my skin requires that I have the feedback from my people that they like me and they respect me and they care about my well-being because they know I care about theirs.
Yes.
This coronavirus thing has really brought out a lot of character in a lot of people that we never expected.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And this is such an opportunity during the novel coronavirus and COVID-19 for leaders to let people know that they are valuable. It is a time to, rather than moan the disruption, to actually leverage the opportunity of caring about people and increasing that trust bank that you're talking about. I think that's incredible. One of the stories that you told me a long time ago about J.B. Hunt, you were in his bus heading to, I think, Illinois to go hunting, and there was an event in St. Louis. You want to walk us through how that was?
So I'll back up just a shade. So Mr. Hunt never drank alcohol, wonderful Christian man, started his trucking company with his wife, Jonelle, who's an adorable human being who was really as much a success of that company as he was. But he was the front man, and he had a big cowboy hat. And so every time we would get to a place that had big truck stop, he would pull in. And actually, we're driving in a white van of one of my neighbors going to Illinois to go hunting. So he'd say, "Ronnie, I'll buy the gas if you'll pull in." Well, Ronnie always liked to get free gas, so he'd pull in. So I would follow Mr. Hunt in to the stations, and he would walk in, and all the truckers are always around one big table, drinking coffee, eating whatever. And he'd walk up and he'd find somebody that worked for J.B. Hunt, because there's always someone in one of those big truck stops, right?
Oh my gosh.
So in St. Louis, he walks up and there's a table full of people. And he says, because the guy's name tag was on his shirt, Bill, "Hey, Bill, I'm J.B. Hunt." Takes his hat off. Of course, Bill knew who Mr. Hunt was, right? They got pictures all over the place of Mr. Hunt. And he goes, "Are we taking care of you, son? Are we getting you home enough?" And he asked him this litany of questions that I saw him duplicate in every stop we made. And it was all those questions that wouldn't really matter to you and I, but to a truck driving man, that was the questions that mattered. And I'm telling you, that guy was so absorbed that he asked those questions because you know why? Mr. Hunt drove a truck. He knew what it was like to drive a truck and to be on the road and be away from your family and all those kind of things that are important to a truck driver. Mr. Hunt knew that. Well, we get back in the car to go, and I said, Mr. Hunt, I just got to ask a question. What were you doing? He goes, recruiting drivers.
Oh, my gosh.
He goes, you think all those guys sitting around him didn't go straight to their truck and call J.B. Hunt to see if they couldn't get a job to work for a guy that cares? Because I do care. He said, it's easy to do my job if you care, right?
So, which goes back to love, right? Just goes back to this big deal of loving and serving people.
Absolutely. And so the rest of the story is even sort of goes to tell you what kind of guy he was. So he says to Ronnie Hissam, who he had no idea was a recovering alcoholic. Ronnie didn't drink either, but he had in the past. And he goes, Ronnie, do you know where that Heiser Bush office is in St. Louis? And Ronnie says, well, of course I know where it is. I mean, it's downtown St. Louis. Well, it's 4:00 on a Friday in St. Louis, Missouri. And that's not the best part of town. And it's cold. So we pull up, and he and Tim Graham, his sidekick, they get out of the van and leave us in the parking lot. Now, the best part of the story is we were going duck hunting. In this white Suburban, we had enough ammunition and guns to start a war. We're sitting in the parking lot of Heiser Bush on Friday afternoon at 4:00 with the truck running because it's cold. Now, what does that look like to a security guard? So I'm so nervous, and I'm telling Ronnie, I said, now, Ronnie, I'm a pretty good salesman, but I think we're going to be handcuffed and put on if they walk up to here and look in this car, I think we're going to get out with handcuffs, and we're going to have to find my lawyer fast because we're in trouble. We look like we're guilty, right? So later, Mr. Hunt comes out. It seemed like 5 hours, but it was probably 30 minutes. And he doesn't tell the story. Tim does. Tim goes, you won't believe what he did. I said, well, tell me, I got to know now. I think I've risked my life to find out what did he do. He walks in to Heiser Bush at 4:00 without an appointment, takes his hat off to the young lady and says, ma'am, I'm J.B. Hunt. I'm here to see Mr. Bush. And can you imagine how many Bushes work at Heiser Bush? You, I think. Maybe a lot.
Maybe.
And so she said, well, sir, which one of them would you like to see? And he said, the oldest, of course. He had no idea their names. So he talks himself into August Bush II's office Friday afternoon at 4:15. Now, what he didn't know that I'm sure the good Lord had his hand on JB is that the Bush family worked on Friday because in the beer business, you don't have receivables. So when someone takes your product, they have to pay you in cash now, not next week. That's the law of the land. So on Fridays, the Bush family work because that's when they get paid, right?
Wow.
So he was there. So he probably thinks JB knew all that, and he planned all that to come see him on a Friday afternoon at 4:15. Well, JB didn't know any of that and doesn't drink Anheuser-Busch products. So, but he looks at me when he gets back and he goes, 55 loads a day. That's what I got out of this cold call.
Oh,
so,
my gosh.
What a salesman. Right?
Oh, my gosh. Well, you said that he walked in and he said to Mr. Bush, he says, how many of your other truckers that are delivering and distributing your goods, how many of them have been standing in your office talking to you, the CEO, the president? And
never.
And then walks out with brand new business. See, stories like that it's so amazing. But what drove him was the interpersonal caring about people. And you can't fake that. And love is the component, seeing people, feeling people. It's so amazing. Do you have other stories? I mean, I know you, of course, you've got, again, Jim Walton, you've got Sam Walton, you've got the Tyson family, Frank Broyles, who is the legendary athletic director at the University of Arkansas, and, all across college football. I mean, he is considered one of the most influential people in college football by the sports writers. You've got him, you've got a guy in Northwest Arkansas named Jim Lindsay, who is a real estate developer and so on. Tell us some more stories of people that have made a difference.
So Coach Broyles and Jim Lindsay, Jim was a football player, one of Coach's favorite people. They were great partners, and I got to be such good friends with Coach Broyles because of my relationship with Jim Lindsay. And Jim has got some dementia issues now, and so he needs all your prayers. But Coach Broyles was one of those people that when we were kids in Arkansas, he was like, the deal.
Oh,
and
man.
so then I
Absolutely.
go work at the bank, and he's on the bank board, and he sort of adopts me as one of his guys. I'm his banker. He would introduce me to everybody as his banker, which was huge because he was a powerful man.
Oh, man.
And he didn't try to be powerful. He just was, And so his power of suggestion was, so I used to always ask him questions, and I loved being around him. And he sort of took me under his wing, and gosh, he took me to Augusta 3 times and played golf. And first time I went, he goes, "Is the bank going to pay for it?" And I said, "This is the Walton's bank. Do you think they're going to pay for it?" And he said, "Oh, well, I guess not. I'll pay for it." Right? So he paid for Augusta. That was a big deal to me because I was working on bank salary. It wasn't very good. So I just remember being at the first tee at Augusta National. I'm 33 years old. He's 66 years old. Right? And I mean, it is an unbelievable feeling for a kid from Carroll County that played at Holiday Island where our grandfather lived.
Bunch of rocks.
A little tiny round thing. And now I'm on the first tee at Augusta National. And I looked at Coach and I said, "I'm so nervous. I don't know what to do." And he looks at me with a cold stare and he goes, "You act like you've been there. That's the price I'll ever get you. Act like you've been there." And, he said, "That's what I tell guys when they score a touchdown. That's what I tell guys when they get an interception. Act like you've been there. Don't act like it's the first time you've ever done it." Right? That sort of advice sort of emanates through a lot of things in life, right? When you really don't know what to do, you got to act like you've been there.
Yeah.
His best advice, though, was, and I take this to heart, you can never have too many friends.
Oh,
you can never, no matter what. And he said to me once, "You're not going to know how many friends you have because they're going to show up at your funeral. That's when friends pay respects, and you're not here, so you're not going to know." And I remember sitting watching his funeral. They had to have it at Bud Walton Arena because no church was big enough to handle his funeral.
Yeah.
So I think he was successful in what he gave me advice for, is that I couldn't have too many friends,
Oh, my gosh.
So all of these guys that Jim Walton, humble beyond belief. He would fly me places with him in his plane. I could tell you scary stories about being in airplanes that you cannot imagine, but I would fly right seat and he's flying, and sometimes he'd go, "Watch over there." He'd forget to tell me to quit, and an hour later I'm still pinned over here thinking I've got to be watching out for meteorites. I don't know what I'm watching for. I'm looking at the sky. And so, but we would land and go in places. Like one time we flew to see the guys at BB&T, and that's a giant bank group, and they were in Savannah, Georgia. And we get out of the plane, and Jim's wearing his normal stuff, which is like, his pants look like he just dropped them the night before and put them back on. They're kind of disheveled. He's a disheveled, he didn't have a tie on. He just kind of had a shirt that looked like maybe he'd worn it a couple times since it'd been laundered. And he's got on glasses with a black strap around the back because they flop off if he didn't wear it that way. And we walk up, and here's these guys in all these banker type suits, right? And here I'm wearing a jacket because I think I've got to actually dress up. Well, they look at me and they stick their hand out and they're like, "Hey, Mr. Walton." And I go, he's right there. This is not my pilot. This is Jim Walton.
That is hilarious.
So it was always great because he was so humble, and he has all that money, and you can read, and my goodness, the wealth that those people have been able to amass in their family. But he was always so incredibly humble. He let me run a bank, for gosh sakes, and taught me through mistakes. And he never, he plenty of times gave me counsel to do something different, but he always led with a humble heart.
I want to invite you to one of our Red Ink Revival Leadership Retreats. Retreats are 40-hour plus intensive experiences led by psychotherapists, neuroscientists, and tenured pastors. These amazing intensives help pastors, staff, and marketplace leaders lead wholeheartedly in every sphere of life. Our retreats are profoundly helpful to you as you lead your organization. However, the most important person you will ever lead is you. Pastors and marketplace leaders struggle with the same emotional drivers. Statistics show that 70% of pastors struggle with depression and fear of inadequacy. 77% feel they do not have a good marriage. 90% are workaholics. 64% are engaged in secret activity around alcohol, drugs, and sexual behaviors. 84% wish they had a process friendship that they could confide in, but grieve the fact that they don't have such a person. Today's leaders are painfully struggling with depression, isolation, anxiety, and panic attacks, and then powerlessly ruminating over what coulda, shoulda, woulda been. Then to right the ship, leaders tend to chase the illusion that a greater performance and a greater success will quiet the enemy in their souls. But performance, even if gained, measured, and celebrated, never quiets the soul. These ruminating emotional states gain momentum over days, months, and years and give power to unmanageable behaviors like rage in marriage, avoidance as parents, or addictions like alcoholism, recreational drugs, pornography, or sexually acting out. For the spiritual leader, succumbing to one or more of these throws them into a firestorm of shame that ultimately keeps them in a cycle of bondage. Yet neurobiologically, we have learned that inordinate behavior is never about the ability to white-knuckle discipline through the temptation. The behavior is driven by emotional griefs, losses, and relationship injuries from our backstories. These emotional memories become embedded into our brain's neurocircuits. Until these memories are addressed and appropriately reprocessed, the struggler will continue to grow in the struggle until there comes the day of public discovery and painful disclosure. Red Ink Retreats provide hands-on experiences in concepts, techniques, and coaching derived from theology, brain research, and psychological modalities. Our goal is to improve your individual leadership satisfaction, releasing a freedom for an energized life and a surprising greater performance. Go to redinkrevival.com and click the Retreats tab. You'll be inspired by previous retreat attenders, you'll hear their stories, and then you can dream of what could happen if you attended a retreat yourself. It might bring exponentially more fruitfulness to your organization. It might save your ministry, your marriage, your kids, and maybe even your self-respect. What is the value of leading wholeheartedly? So what are you waiting for? Go and register for our next retreat. Thank you for letting me share our Red Ink Retreats dream. Yeah, and I hear about, all these guys, and again, they're not one of them is a B-teamer in terms of the success resume. They're all profoundly successful people. And when you have all these stories and so many things you can't get in a classroom, you're not going to get in even a degree program, you're not going to get in some book or a podcast. These are things that you were able to absorb just by having a front row seat into the relationship with them. What today, as you look at those successful leaders who are able to really move and shake and make a difference in the world, and then those leaders that might struggle a little bit more, what do you think the differences are between them?
I'm thinking as I'm talking to you, because I don't always reflect on this, but so the things that I think that strung together these people, they were entrepreneurial. David was an entrepreneur. Sam Walton was an entrepreneur. And you said Johnny Tyson, actually it's Don Tyson, his father. That was my mentor. And Don, Don used to wear a uniform with his name on it, Don. And I'd always, because way back, I actually was his loan officer. kind of hard to imagine. And so I'd go see, and I'd say, Mr. Tyson. He said, now, Mr. Tyson was my father, John Tyson, and he passed away in an accident. And I'd appreciate it if you just call me Don.
Oh,
and I'd always, okay, Mr. Don, I'll call you Mr. Don anytime you ask me to. My mother taught me to say Mr. So I'm not going to be able to erase that part because I'm still fondly appreciative of the lessons that my mother taught me about manners, right?
Yeah.
And so to the point of all of those guys, hey, Coach Broyles did things no one did in the athletic world before him. You know, Nolan Richardson's a dear friend. Nolan Richardson pioneered things that no one else did. David Glass, you know, changed the whole retail world. And Don Tyson got the biggest meat company in the world. J.B. Hunt had the most profitable and one of the largest trucking companies. And he would always sit and think of what I'm going to do next. He never rested on his laurels. He never got satisfied that he was important or made it or whatever. You know, these guys had a drive that is something that I don't honestly wonder if God's got to give you that drive. I don't think you can just rise up someday and say, I'm going to start having that kind of drive, because, you know, those are, and the people that were key to those guys, Willard Walker, you know, I go teach classes at the University of Arkansas occasionally, and I walk in buildings that are named after all these people that were our chairman of our board, Greg Lee, was chief operating officer of Tyson Foods for many, many years. Leland Tollett was chairman of the board. I get to call Leland Tollett any day of the week I want to on a cell phone and go, Leland, what about this coronavirus? The wisdom that people have that have been in those positions is something that we all need to try to seek out and find, and any piece of that you can use can be helpful, because you and I, most of our lives, what we're trying to do to be helpful is to build people up. Yeah. Give them confidence. The Coach Broyles speech, act like you've been there.
Absolutely.
Raise up your chin, do the best you can. You can't do better than that, right?
Yep.
You can't. No one can do better than their best effort.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
Now, maybe your effort needs to be better as time goes on, but confidence is what all of these guys had. That just the aura of that confidence made you want to go, hey, give me the ball. I'll run through that block wall. And, Coach Broyles, but all of these guys coached, right? Yeah. Differently, but they coached in their own way. And you and I played athletics, and so things always sort of relate back to athletics. And that's really not fair, because you don't have to be an athlete to be successful, and there's plenty of them who haven't. However, the mentality of, as a youth, of the thought of being on a team and what it means if you don't do your part and all those things that you don't really think about when you're playing basketball with four other guys. When you get to be 60 years old, like I'll be in August, you go, man, if I didn't pass the ball to Steve Johnson, we wouldn't have won that game. Yeah. Yeah. So I just think that the thing about leadership is that the really great ones, they were leaders, and they went to the top of their professions because of the people behind them rose them up, not because they, took a hammer and whack-a-mole. Everybody didn't do what they were supposed to do, right? Yeah. And you and I know people that, hey, in today's time, I appreciate and I pray for the President of the United States. I don't like the way he does business. Yeah. I like the success of the business that he's done, but I don't know that I could be buddies with him. Right. Right. He's not my kind of guy. David Glass, I enjoyed being buddies with David Glass because he was my kind of guy. Yeah. So I think in my life, I try to stay around guys like those that I feel like are shedding a little wisdom my direction. And I hope to do anything I can to be in a situation that they find me useful enough to answer my phone. Yeah,
absolutely. I think it's interesting as you're defining the characteristics of these guys, that they're driven, but what they're driven about is it's a multiplicity of things, but ultimately it's people. They're driven about people. A great leader is not somebody who holds up and just begins to reinvent life by themselves. A great leader is somebody who adds value to so many people that they push that leader up and out. And so I do think it's interesting how often we can become introverts. And even if we have an introvert personality, that doesn't mean that we can use that as an excuse to isolate. The fact is leadership is people. That you can't lead in isolation. You have to have people with you that you're investing in, you're loving, you're serving, and so on. I've got a question for you about you obviously have a lot of young people that probably find out that you might be accessible in some level. I know as a banker, all you have to do is do a little Google search on you and you find that there are people that have done business with you and they'll say this about you. They'll say, one thing about Gary Head is I'm not just a customer, I'm a partner. And that I found somebody who will partner with me in my business who actually has a bank and resources, and we're in this together. You are somebody who endeavors. I think Jim Lindsay taught you how to always return every call by the end of the day. And you have all these kind of opportunities that some people could access you. When you're looking for somebody that you could mentor, because you're always wanting to multiply yourself, when you're looking for a mentee to be able to mentor, what are some qualities that cause you to stick to them, to say, I really want to invest my energy to them?
Well, listen, I'm so blessed with so many young people in our organization. And, you know, I think sometimes they would tell you I'm a little hard-headed. That's probably more than fair. I know where I got that. That's a Clark gene, and you know that too.
That's a granddad.
That's our grandfather. And he wouldn't like this virus, stepping back a second, because, man, that's the cleanest guy I've ever known. I can't imagine him cleaning fingernails any more than he. I mean, this would be bad for him. He would be bleeding from the hands from washing. So good that he's in heaven and not worried about this. But I can tell you that, you know, I like to see people's actions, because to your point earlier, show me what, don't tell me what you're going to do. You know, bullies tell you they're going to beat you up. You know, guys you want to avoid are the ones that hit you first. And, you know, so I think that I aspire to, and I have lots of them, right? I have 140 people that expect me to take whatever time I need to counsel them in any direction they want about any subject they choose to bring up. But I like the ones that go try to figure it out and then ask for advice versus tell me what to do. I'm not going to do anything until you give me advice. And honestly, I spend a lot of time hiring people that don't require close supervision.
Yeah.
You know, because I don't want to be that kind of close supervisor. I want to be that person. You know, Leland Tollett, who you don't know him, but I'm telling you, he's one of the guys in the world that when the history books are written, he ran Tyson Foods all those years. He says, don't be Custer. So, you know, you got to think about it. You think back in history, what did Custer do? He took a bunch of guys that knew better and went and did something and basically got them wiped out, you know, because he was hard-headed and didn't listen to better advice. Yeah. So what I try to teach the young people in our organization is find plenty of wisdom. Don't follow one guy. Let's don't go drink the juice over in Africa and everybody die because one guy says God's coming back. He got the wrong call, right? Yeah. So I want to have advice from Mort Flesher. You don't even know him. He owns the biggest. This whole deal's crazy right now, but he owns Store Capital. It's the largest single tenant real estate company in the world, and a big public company. So I called him 2 days ago in Arizona. He's 82 years old. And I said, hey, what are we going to do here? And he says, hey, I'm going to talk to my 25 best salesmen because we've got to help our restaurant clients more now than we've ever had to in our life. Was he lamenting, oh, no, what am I going to do? Oh, no. You know, he had turned that energy into let's go figure out what we have to do to help these people with a life preserver get to the other side. Our young people are getting to learn things today that they would have never seen. You and I've never seen them in our lifetime.
Yeah, for real.
Who would have imagined being where we are now? For real. So I look for those people that are doers, not sayers. That's the word I would use.
I love it. I think even as a pastor, one of the things that energizes me the most about someone who has allowed me to lead them is that they have taken the things that I've taught, and the things I've taught them has made a difference. If they apply it and it makes a difference, I get a ton of joy out of that. Where folks are kind of a bottomless pit of advice, but they never act on it, that's where it's like, I don't know about that. I don't know about that. Let's move into the idea of futility, and I'm going to speak directly about pastors. 70% of pastors report that they struggle with depression. Their self-esteem is lower now than when they first started. The sense of futility, the sense of whatever I do, it's not enough. So as pastors, you go to the church growth conferences, you read the books, you are familiar with Jim Collins, you read A Good to Greats, How the Mighty Fall, you're doing everything in your power. You listen to the podcast of leadership, you are going to the conferences, you're doing everything in your power. And sometimes it looks like you can't control the people that you're trying to lead. You can't seem to get an increase in the metrics. If you do, it's incremental. And then you get on social media and you see everybody else. It looks like they're killing the day. And you're struggling with this sense of whatever I do, if I don't have the gifts, if I don't have the resources, whatever it is, I'm struggling here. So this idea of futility, if you were coaching somebody who you felt like, man, they've got some really great gifts, they're great people, they have leadership skills and so on, but they aren't seeing the fruitfulness of their work, and they're finding themselves self-deprecating and feeling maybe even some self-contempt, shutting down, just trying to tolerate it all. What would you say to a person like that?
Well, I think the premise that would be really important for my pastor to understand is that I expect every great leader preaches a little something. And let's hope every great leader preaches from their heart. That's what I expect from my preacher, is to preach from your heart. So if your heart has issues, right? So I know Patrick Norris follows people in his business that are prolific. He follows people that have been very successful so that he can pick up the pieces, just like the stories that I'm sharing from people that were successful in business. Every one of those guys were Christian men that preached to their people morals, preached to their, we didn't even talk about those kind of things. Really, you can't have poor morals and no judgment and be someone that I'm going to follow. They call that gangs, right?
Yeah.
They don't call that success, in my opinion. So I think that all of us go through times, all of us, and only people that are better liars to themselves than I hope to ever be are going to say, gosh, I've never worried about, whether I had it figured out or not. Well, hey, look, if anybody's got that good a connection direct to God, no offense, they're pretty wealthy and they probably don't have to work very much, because I don't believe that exists. So we all struggle in trying to decide how best to project. That's the word, because we're all on stage. Yeah. Leaders are on stage. Ministers are on stage, once or twice a week. Leaders like David Glass were on 24/7, 7 days a week. The burnout is enormous. So you got to think about a guy like David Glass. What did he do to try to keep some normalcy in his life? Well, he had baseball, and he was a walking encyclopedia of baseball. And I know you had Dayton on there. I can tell you, he could tell you every player in every league, from the minors to the top, what they made, where they went to high school. It was unbelievable. George Brett kept asking him one day and I was shocked at the knowledge that he had that had nothing to do, right? Nothing to do whatsoever with Walmart. That was his passion that got his mind off. I think, I like to fish. I like to hunt. I think you have to be able to completely get away, whatever that is for you, and have enough downtime to let your mind rest. If your mind is going all the time about, I got to preach to this guy about this, because I can't imagine being a minister and having all those different problems and trying to think I have to be the expert at a million different issues. Served on a mental health board for 29 years, and those people need help. and they all probably, hopefully, would have a pastor. I'm not sure that's the case, but I can tell you that whatever that is above my calling.
Yeah.
But if you don't have the ability to focus on something else, I think that's the thing I see with a lot of people that burn out and they have struggles, and they're, you have to have that circle of influence of people that you pick up that phone and they're going to take your phone call and you're going to say, gosh, I'm really struggling with this. And they have to be someone that you respect and trust, or you're wasting the time.
Yeah.
Don't call your buddy, fluff him up. It's not going to do you any good. You need to call people that you think have been there, done that, right?
Yep.
They scored they didn't dance in the end zone. Tell me what I need to do, right?
Yeah.
To be what I'm trying. That's the kind of person you and I want to help.
Yeah.
Someone that's be better so they can help someone else. And I think pastors many times, and I've known a lot of them, they put themselves in a situation where they don't think they can ever fail. Well, who among us hasn't failed?
Right.
My goodness. So that open honesty is difficult in your business.
Yeah.
Preacher. It's difficult because, they saw me screw up. I said darn real loud one day or something. Hey, look, I just think that the pedestal that some people in your business have to put themselves on in their minds is something that cracks the day they begin that.
Yeah.
So don't get up on, hey, Jim Walton didn't get on any pedestal. David Glass didn't get on any pedestal. Don Tyson, none of those guys ever built any monuments to stand on. But, now they're gone, and there's monuments all over the place of those people because they loved and cared about everybody, and they did their best. And that's what I would tell anybody that was struggling, and I do it all the time. Hey, be honest.
Yeah.
Do the best you can.
Yeah.
And never, ever think that it's not okay to say, am I in the right business? Any of us that have never asked that question of ourselves are foolish. Am I in the right business? I mean, now I need to be that, right?
Yeah.
Am I in the right? Hey, look, I'm preaching, but maybe this is not what I need to be doing. There's a lot of bankers that aren't bankers anymore. You got me? Because, things change but so if you're going to be one, be a good one.
Yeah.
My advice. Don't be a half-hearted one.
Yeah.
Don't do something, people that have stayed in jobs because they got a regular pay and they just stay and they're miserable and they come home and they drink too much and they yell at their kids. And, I don't know what all their problems are. They're going to tell you before they tell me.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But right behind preacher and bartender gets all those stories.
Yeah.
And the matter is, and that's why I say many times I have to preach, the fact of the matter is that you have to grab your own britches on both sides and pull them up and button them yourself if you're going to be able to make it through this world.
Yeah.
And if you can't, I pray you have help. But for leaders, we have to button up or put our britches on one leg at a time, button up our pants. Sometimes you grit your teeth when you act like you're smiling,
Yeah.
But you got to do it. You got to be that person that can get through a struggle without weeping.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's not fair. It doesn't feel as horrible, and all that stuff. But to be a leader means sometimes you have to have a face that's different to be a preacher, to be a bank leader. You have to put a face on when things are incredibly difficult and crashing down around you.
So good.
Because we're at war. You got to, hey, who's going to grab the gun and run to the front?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And that face you're talking about is to the people that you lead.
That's right.
But you also said that you have to have a group of relationships that are not that people you're leading, that you can fall into to be comforted by, to regulate all of the pain and the suffering. So if you don't have both, you're gonna struggle. That's great advice. One of the Gary Head stories I tell is several years ago I had a staff member that just a good guy, great family. But when I went through the vetting hiring process, I didn't ask the best questions. I didn't know what questions to ask. I didn't know how to fully vet them out. And they had said that they could do all these different things. Oh yeah, I'm great at that. And oh yeah, I'm great at that. And oh yeah, I'm great at that. And I just thought, well, of course, they're very convincing. They're great at it. And then they came here and they weren't great at it. And it cost a lot of resources at our church to be able to accommodate, because they were going to be a growth engine. And I get them here and it took less than a year to realize that's not happening. I'm frustrated. I call you on the phone. And I say, hey, Gary, I've got this guy. How do I help him rise up to the potential that could be there? You interrupted me. I mean, it wasn't like 3 sentences in, and you interrupted me and you said, wait. You already know the answer to all this. You know that he doesn't have the skill set. You know that he doesn't have the ability, and you're stringing him along, hoping that you, if you're patient enough and kind enough, that you are going to get him to improve, but you know he's not going to improve, and therefore you're not loving him. That's what you told me. You're not loving him. If you cared about him, you would cut him loose so that he could go do something that would help his self-esteem. There's no way, you said, that he is not aware that he's underperforming and displeasing you, and that's not something he can do long term. So do yourself a favor and cut bait. So talk about how love does that kind of thing.
Well, none of us in the world want to do something we're not good at. None of us. I mean, work is work, and a lot of people say it's definitionally something you don't want to do. Well, I love my job, so I don't aspire to that conversation. So everyone deserves to do something in life that makes them feel good, and hopefully you do more of that than things that make you feel bad. Yeah. So if your work life is not designed to do mostly things that you truly enjoy, you're in the wrong job.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, we do some extensive profile testing because, hey, when you interview young people, and I was one of them, you say what you think you need to get hired.
Right.
All of us sort of did. The fact is that the measure of your success is a lot of times it's going to be your aptitude towards your job. Hey, I want to go take a sales job. I'm a great salesman. I mean, I know they get paid a lot of money. That's what I want to do. But by the way, I don't really talk to people when I'm not sitting here talking to you. And, I'd really rather sit at home and read books or get on my computer or whatever. Well, if you're not that type of personality for the job you're in, and I would say that job couldn't be a preacher either if you don't really enjoy interaction with people because that's your job, then you should find one that's going to fit what your aspirations truly are. And so we do a DISC profile, DISC.
Yeah, sure.
And I think that a lot of times that helps me. Hey, good people are hard to find. Good people will produce if given the right set of tools to be successful.
Yeah.
So if I put a non-sales person in a sales job, they're going to feel bad. They're not going to be very good, and they're going to get yelled at all the time, and they're not going to, it's going to be a horrible deal, and you got a train wreck coming. How quick are you going to get it off the tracks? That's the question.
Yeah. So
we try to, on the front end, say, hey, look, but that does not mean that people don't get to an age and say, gosh, I just don't want to do that. You know what? I'm 55 years old. I've been selling all my life. I'd really like to do something different. Okay. Well, if you're honest with me, then I can say, good. Well, let's try this for a while, and let's don't put you on, the track that you've been on. And being honest is not easy particularly when you get older, because you're like, oh my gosh, they're just going to get rid of me. And then what'll I do? Right. So being honest is a really difficult thing. Some people don't really understand that that's the only way to be happy is to be honest with yourself. Now, you can lie to everybody else, but if you're lying to yourself, you got no chance.
Yeah. Yeah. That's such a good word. Well, when you as a CEO are leading an organization and in your teams, one of the biggest demarcations of what creates culture and what doesn't. So if your organization has all these attitudes, emotions, ways of doing things, and again, it's these heavy emotions that could be undermining the very thing that the mission is about, the thing that makes the biggest impact on culture is accountability. And when you look at accountability for a lot of CEOs, from the great researchers as we study organizations and the different CEOs and their personality trends and traits, many of them hate having to hold people accountable, but they still find a way to do it. Talk to us a little bit about how you deal with the emotional side of accountability, because I mean, you're a person who likes to be people's friend. One of your biggest joys is taking people hunting and fishing, and your team. So talk to us about accountability and how you manage that when you don't want to do it.
And listen, so part of that being honest is that you also need to know what you're not good at. None of us have all. Yeah. So you have to have teammates that fill in. But if you hire somebody that's just the same as you, what are you going to get?
Yeah.
So you have to be smart enough to hire to your weaknesses. So with me, accountability is not my best subject. So I have young people. I got a 25-year retired Walmart guy that I've known since he was in college. That's my accountability guy. Now, he makes people mad, doesn't even hurt his feelings, And so I get to go around behind him and go, hey, well, look, why are you mad first? Well, because I wasn't doing it. Okay, well, then he had a right to say what he said. Well, you don't say it like that. No. And that's the reason is I'm not very good at saying it like he said.
That is amazing.
I get out the salve and I try to salve the wounds and go, okay, but did you miss the point? I love you. I want you to be on this team. But if you can't do it, don't be mad at him.
Yeah.
Look in the mirror. Let's get this done.
Yeah.
So having that team that creates that, but then I have to go to the guy that does that and say, hey, look, if I die tomorrow, bad news, the survivor thing is going to be bad for you because they're voting you out of here. You got me? You've made them all mad. So it takes a lot more work and a lot more words to communicate something that doesn't become offensive.
Yeah.
Agreed?
Yeah.
As I remember Jim Lindsay used to say, people that cussed weren't smart enough to think of the right words.
Whoo, wow.
How wrong is that? So you say a cuss word because you're not smart enough to communicate what you're trying to get across, so you cut the corner.
Yeah.
Wow. That's I've never forgotten that, So, yeah, he said dumb people cuss. Smart people can communicate, right? And that had nothing to do with the Bible. That's just pretty darn common sense.
Yeah.
So I think that in each of our situations, you have to have that person that is good at what you're not. That's what makes a team.
Yeah.
And the less teammates you have, the more difficult to do what I just said is. I got 140 people. If I had 5, a smaller team is far more difficult to find those skills, and everybody doesn't want to punch everybody,
Yeah.
I got one rule. Remember, it's get along or you got to get along. That's that's a rule at our bank.
I love it. I love that you don't feel as a CEO the shouldas, like that you should be the one holding everybody in the highest level of accountability. I love that you have no shame around, no, I know what I'm good at. And if I have somebody who is holding them accountable, I don't have a problem coming behind and holding the line, because obviously there's a need for alignment with that person who's holding people accountable. You can never undermine, you can never cast a shadow of doubt about what they said, but you can hold the line and then be like, man, that's got to be rough. Is it rough that you went through that? I love you, man, but he's right. He's right, and if you don't, what'd you just say? If you don't get along, you're going to get along.
That's it. Get along.
Well, Gary,
team jersey.
That's it. Well, Gary, I so love that we get to do this. I love you as a friend and a family member, and I love you as a leader. Thank you for taking time out. I hope while you're at your kind of vacation home out in rural country area, Arkansas, I hope you have just an amazing, refreshing time, and can't wait to get to see you again, man.
Good to see you. Love you.
Well, thank you for joining us today. I want to encourage you that you are enough to lead through this unprecedented time. God has called and anointed you to bring innovative solutions to the novel problems we're facing. We at Red Ink Revival are praying for you to rise. You might be wondering, what's next? I want to encourage you to go to our website at redinkrevival.com. There you're going to find our resources, retreats, upcoming special events, and a growing bank of content. Sign up for our free e-newsletter to stay abreast of all that is available. Also, I'd like to remind you of an incredible opportunity to learn what drives your money management from a neuroscience, psychological, and theological perspective. Have you been to financial peace trainings but can't seem to execute on it? Do you shut down when budgets have to be reviewed or talked about? Have you ever wanted to have better insights to your team's money management personalities and why they are attached to money the way they are? Let us train you to know what is driving you, your spouse, your kids, and your church staff around financial issues. In our online financial personality training event, each attendee will be given a dynamic assessment instrument that is grounded in theories of psychology, behavioral economics, neuroscience, neuromarketing, attachment, and addiction. It's both an experiential and a training event. Go to redinkrevival.com and look under the events tab to find out more about our online financial personality training event. Also, we're still planning to host our next Red Ink Revival leadership retreats for pastors and spouses, church staff and past spouses, and all other leaders. I hope everybody can make it to one of these life-changing events. The dates and more info is at redinkrevival.com. Well, everything we're building is to resource you to be a wholehearted leader. I'd love for you to be a part of our tribe. I can't wait till our next episode. I'm glad you're with us today. We'll see you next time.